The night rain poured relentlessly over the small, dimly lit apartment, tapping on the roof like impatient fingers. A single lamp flickered in the corner, struggling to fend off the shadows that crept across the peeling walls. Aarav Malik sat by the tiny kitchen table, his tired eyes fixed on the small mound of homework in front of his 7-year-old daughter Mira. Her tiny fingers trembled as she tried to write, and Aarav's heart tightened with a familiar ache. Life hadn't been easy since the accident that had taken his wife away 3 years ago. Now, it was just the two of them huddled together in a world that often felt impossibly cruel. A sudden knock on the door startled him. He wasn't expecting anyone. Visitors were rare. His voice wavered as he called out, "Who's there?" A calm, measured voice responded, "Please, may I come in? I just need shelter for the night." Aarav hesitated, glancing at Mira, who clutched her stuffed rabbit nervously. He wasn't usually one to let strangers in, especially in a city where safety was a constant concern, but there was something in the stranger's voice, unusual vulnerability that pierced through Aarav's caution. The man looked soaked, drenched from the relentless rain, and carried himself with a quiet dignity, despite his bedraggled appearance, without thinking too much. Aarav opened the door and stepped aside. "Thank you," the man whispered, stepping in water dripping from his polished shoes onto the faded carpet. His clothes, though drenched, hinted at wealth-expensive fabrics, subtle designer cuts, but they were soaked to the point of near anonymity. "I won't stay long. Just one night. I promise I won't be any trouble." Aarav nodded, slightly unsettled. "One night, then you leave," he said, automatically, more to himself than to the man. Mira peeked from behind the sofa, her wide eyes scanning the stranger with quiet curiosity. There was something comforting in his smile, even in the dim light of their small apartment. "Before we continue, if you believe in kindness and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel's Stories of Kindness." The man introduced himself as Vihaan Kapoor. He spoke with a soft, measured tone, and there was a confidence in his presence that made Aarav uneasy, yet inexplicably trusting. Vihaan didn't pry into Aarav's life, and Aarav, exhausted and wary of small talk, didn't offer much in return. That night, they shared a quiet dinner, instant noodles and leftover vegetable, sitting in awkward silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Mira, sensing the tension, offered Vihaan her small, crooked smile, and he smiled back genuinely this time, and it was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds as the rain continued its relentless rhythm outside. Vihaan shared fragments of his life. He was a businessman, a CEO of a large company, but something in his tone betrayed loneliness. He spoke of deals and deadlines, of traveling to foreign cities, but each word carried a weight and emptiness that Aarav immediately recognized. Life had robbed them both of joy, but in different ways. Aarav through loss, Vihaan through isolation, masked by wealth. The night deepened, and eventually Vihaan offered to leave. "I should find a hotel," he murmured, but Mira had already grown attached. She had fallen asleep, curled up on the sofa, a small blanket draped over her shoulders, her tiny hands clutching her rabbit. Aarav shook his head. "It's late, and the rain. You can stay here just tonight." One night, morning arrived with a tentative sun breaking through grey clouds. Aarav woke to the sound of soft humming. He found Vihaan in the kitchen, making tea with practiced hands, the aroma filling the small apartment. "Good morning," Vihaan said, smiling gently. There was something almost fatherly in the way he looked at Mira as she slowly rubbed her eyes awake. Aarav realized with a pang that Vihaan had treated their home with respect, moving quietly, cleaning up after himself, never making demands. "What about your hotel?" Aarav asked, awkwardly. Vihaan shrugged, a small self-deprecating smile on his lips. "Some places feel like home for a night. Some people feel like home, even for strangers." Aarav's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. Days passed and Vihaan's presence lingered longer than either of them expected. He didn't intrude, he helped silently fixing leaking taps, teaching Mira how to tie her shoes properly, reading bedtime stories in a voice that carried warmth and patience. Aarav hadn't realized he missed. There were nights when Aarav would find Vihaan on the balcony staring at the city skyline with a distant expression. He never asked for anything, never judged, just existed in their lives, becoming an invisible thread of support that held their fragile family together. One evening, Aarav found Mira drawing a picture of their 3 family members, Aarav, and a tall man she had nicknamed the stranger with the kind eyes. Aarav's heart ached with gratitude and a hint of fear. Vihaan was a guest, and he would leave eventually, but the bond forming between them was undeniable, almost magical. Vihaan eventually confessed one rainy evening as they sat watching the storm. "I didn't just get lost tonight. I lost myself, my life, my purpose, even my happiness. I thought money could fill it, but it didn't. Meeting you and Mira, it reminded me what matters, what I had forgotten." Aarav didn't respond immediately, but the sincerity in Vihaan's voice was unmistakable. For the first time in years, Aarav felt a glimmer of hope, that maybe life could be more than just surviving. Months passed, and the line between visitor and family blurred. Vihaan continued to help, to guide, to teach. He had the uncanny ability to make Aarav feel seen, not just as a struggling single dad, but as a man who deserved peace and happiness. Mira adored him, and Aarav found himself laughing more, eating better, sleeping easier, and yet a shadow of apprehension lingered. Vihaan's life, after all, was not theirs. One day the promise of one night would come back to haunt them. That day arrived unexpectedly. Aarav returned home one afternoon to find an envelope on the table. Vihaan had left as quietly as he had arrived. Inside a note. "Thank you for letting me stay. You reminded me what it means to live, to love, to hope. I hope you and Mira never forget that I will always be with you in heart and memory." Aarav sank into the chair, gripping the note until his knuckles turned white. Mira clung to him, sensing the absence, her tiny tears wetting his shirt for hours. They sat in silence, mourning the invisible presence that had transformed their lives in just a few months, and yet there was warmth in that emptiness, a lesson in kindness and humanity that would never fade. Weeks later, a package arrived. Inside were gifts for Mira, books, art supplies, and a letter for the little girl who reminded me of joy. "Keep dreaming. Always love, Vihaan." Aarav realized then that some people, even if they leave physically, never truly leave. Vihaan's brief presence had healed wounds that years of struggle had failed to touch. It had reminded them that even in the darkest nights, there were people capable of compassion. Strangers capable of changing lives forever. Years later, Mira would tell her own children the story of the kind stranger who stayed for one night but left a lifetime of love. Aarav would watch her, a soft smile on his lips, and silently thank fate for the man who had taught them the value of trust, hope, and unspoken kindness. Life would continue, unpredictable and wild, but they carried a memory that shone brighter than any hardship, a memory of the night. A millionaire CEO, lost and lonely, found a family without even knowing it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Your small act of engagement can honor the kindness and second chances that change lives in ways we never expect. Special request. Every time you show kindness, you create ripples that touch lives you may never even see. Remember that today, even though Vihaan never returned to their lives, physically, the echoes of his presence lingered forever. Aarav and Mira grew stronger, not just surviving but thriving, carrying a lesson in their hearts that every act of selfless kindness leaves an indelible mark, and every night, no matter how dark, can bring a stranger who changes everything.